I'm Tim Ventura, and we're joined today by Dr. Mario Herger, technology trend researcher, consultant, speaker, and author of over a dozen books. Mario is a senior executive leader with over 20 years of experience in corporate innovation and the founder of EnterpriseGarage.io and Rappelkopf. And he's coached executive teams from Porsche, VW, DATEV, SAP, KTM, and others on understanding tech trends and the Silicon Valley mindset. Mario's work focuses on how new technologies impact societies, people, behaviors, and the environment. And he's spoken on this at TEDxSanFrancisco and TEDxSalzburg, among many other keynote addresses and speaking engagements. He has a Doctorate of Technology in Chemical Engineering from Vienna University of Technology, as well as an engineering diploma, and a BA in Commercial Science from Vienna University of Economics and Business. So Mario, welcome, sir. It is a true pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Tim, for having me. If I listen to you talking about my curriculum, I think, wow, that's a great guy. I have to meet this guy. That's just me. And I realize, well, if you're old enough, you probably achieved some stuff, and that always looks impressive. But in fact, I don't think it is that impressive.
You have achieved quite a lot, sir. I can hear the humility coming through, but just looking at like the list of books and blogs, and we will get into that in just a moment. You have a lot. You've produced a lot of material. You've given a lot of speeches and lectures. Again, I will put links in the show notes to all of that. But let me start out by saying you're originally from Austria, but you've been in Silicon Valley now since 2001. Can you give me a little bit of background, I guess, on your experience? You know, what led you to move to the Valley and how that's been?
So I was born in Vienna and grew up in Vienna and went to the university there. Vienna is this little town in Austria, 2 million inhabitants, known for its music, known for literature and culture. And what I always wanted to do is move to foreign country. We couldn't travel that much when I was a kid, so I was interested in other cultures, and so I put out my education also so that I have multiple languages that I speak. And first I started off in Germany with SAP, a German software company. And after 3 years, there was an opportunity to get to the US. I worked in the business intelligence space as a software developer and software manager. And 40% of all customers were in the US. So there was the opportunity then to go to Palo Alto. And so in 2001, 2 weeks after September 11th, I moved to Palo Alto. It was an interesting time. Some interesting events that took place in following this tragic events. And ever since then, I've ever been in the United States. So 22 years, almost 22 years now.
Wow. I mean, just amazing. So you've done public speaking on tech, written hundreds of blog posts, over a dozen books. Again, there's this massive body of information online that you put together. So what are some of your top speaking topics? What are some of the focus areas in technology that you've been focused on, especially lately?
So when I was at SAP, the last 5-6 years, I was a so-called innovation strategist. We were looking at what are the technologies that are coming out of the Silicon Valley, the San Francisco Bay Area, basically, that are influencing SAP's technology. SAP is not just business applications as people know it, but also the technology underneath it. And so, for example, the iPad came out in 2010, and I was still at SAP at this time, and suddenly all the customers wanted to enter data into SAP systems with an iPad. And we were just not able to do that because they need a framework for that. And what happens if you lose an iPad? What happens with the customer data on it? And so on, all these questions. And then when I left SAP, I basically continued what I was doing just on my own. I'm looking at technologies that I'm interested in. And because I'm from Europe, I often meet European delegations. So people from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, but also other countries. And then they try to explain to me often how the Silicon Valley works, from basically not living there, but explaining it to me and why they don't see any danger for their own industry and why this is all a hype here. And specifically, I started with autonomous electric cars and autonomous cars. As you know, Germany, Austria, the most powerful automotive industries, countries, yeah, with building the best cars. They invented the car. Yeah, Volkswagen is still owned majority by an Austrian family, the Porsche and Pierre family. And I realized, wait a second, we have Tesla here, yeah, and they're just changing everything at the moment. And when you extrapolate it and forecast what's going to happen, you will be in trouble, yeah. And now autonomous vehicles is the same. So I wrote a book on that topic in order to make basically kind of assembling all the facts and figures that I see in the Silicon Valley, and that became a bestseller in Germany. It was then translated into English and French and Chinese. So you see, my publisher was very happy about that. And in the meantime, a lot of those forecasts have turned out becoming true. We are going to electric vehicles. There's no doubt about that anymore. And now it's autonomous vehicles. And combined with these technologies is, for example, AI, artificial intelligence for autonomous driving. And I mean, you follow that as well as I do. Currently with GPT-4, ChatGPT, Bard, Lambda, and the Stable Diffusion, and all these generative AIs, we see there is a renaissance of that interest. And it feels like, I think 97 is when the internet browser came out, the Netscape, that suddenly people see opportunities and it will change everything. So I'm writing about those kind of topics, but also focus always on behaviors. So I try to understand why the Silicon Valley is so innovative and other regions not, or what other regions can learn and what other regions can contribute to innovation that the Silicon Valley would need, and what impact those changes have in, in regards to jobs, politics, regulations that you need, to the economy, to how we build cities. With autonomous cars and electric cars, cities change. So, and I try to make more comprehensive books writing about that. In a way, most of them, as you have seen, are in German, but some are translated into English, like the last driver's license holder has already been born, about electric and autonomous vehicles.
Well, yeah, and actually, I want to get into the books next. So some of your titles include Das Silicon Valley Mindset, Cyber Eft, Future Angst, and then you have an upcoming one entitled Creative Intelligence, which is due out in November. And again, I will put links to the, in these for the show notes. I do want to mention that these are German language titles. You mentioned a few of them have been translated though, right? So they're English readers can read a few of these.
So the last driver's license holder has been translated and also updated for an English-speaking market. So I'll bring more numbers from the US, from the UK, from Canada in there. And the French version, the same. The French version came out last year in 2022. So the books that you mentioned, the Silicon Valley Mindset, was basically an explanation of how the Silicon Valley what makes the Silicon Valley so strong, and that starts with being open-minded. The way I write books and the reason why I write books, I'm kind of a translator living here in the Silicon Valley, trying to convey its innovation spirit to another culture, maybe the Germans. And when you look there at news reports, what's going on there, you hear the first thing is criticism, negative reactions to it. For example, AI. When you read the news, generative, you did start talking about cultural imperialism, yeah, and the dangers of IP, and this has to be regulated, and it's getting out of hand, and don't even understand what are the possibilities with that and the chances. And often you realize when you first discuss the chances and the possibilities that some of the risks are never going to happen. Yeah, but I'm from there. I was like that. I changed, of course, living here. So you feel pretty smart if you point out the risks, right? Because you are the one who gets it. Yeah, but no, you have to bring solutions. And I'm an engineer, and when I have then German engineers, and German engineering, has a certain reputation, being very good, very precise working, great craftsmanship. And then you hear them spending their cognitive capacity on discussing all the risks and the dangers and why it cannot work. I always ask myself, what happened once you left college? At college, there was never an exam that said proof that there's never ever a solution for X. Yeah, you had find a solution for X. That was what happens once you switch to a company, and then explain why it never ever can happen and work like this. Yeah, so this is the way I also look at my writing. When I write about those topics, I try to show that the opportunities, the chances, and that does not mean I'm not talking about risks. I actually wrote one book specifically about risks and how they are misused. That's Cyberfucked. I'm not sure if I can say this.
Oh,
this
no,
word.
that's, yeah.
It's about online harassment of women in threats that they get, public women, why this is a problem and why we have to stop that. And I wrote that from a man's perspective for other men to understand that issue. And of course, that is perpetuated mostly through digital technologies that allow us to better stalk, to better harass and threaten women. And that's a real issue. But I think it is way more naive if you are first looking at the risks and the dangers only, because they never give a technology or a new thing the opportunity to bloom, to figure out what actually are the chances with that. And we are surrounded by technology. Just the reason that we can make this interview is technology. This is technology. The reason that we are as old as we look, is that we have the medication, the vaccination. This is all technology. The food that keeps us healthy, as much as we may complain, that's all technology. Humans are Homo technicus. So humans have always created technology, and the luxury to complain about the dangers and the risks of technology is thanks to technology that we can do that. So that's what I try to convey in my books.
Yeah, so let me get into creative intelligence. Again, this is the new book. It's coming out in November. This is about AI and Chat GPT, and that's a great way for us to segue into current headlines. So I have to ask what your thoughts are on this recent controversy surrounding Chat GPT, and that we had Bing search engine that was apparently cursing people out for a while. And then now we have calls for a pause or potentially even a moratorium on AI research. Do you think that this is overblown, I guess?
So first, I'm totally excited about what's going on here. Yeah. So I've written the first AI book in 2020. It came just out when the pandemic started. Yeah, where I make already the case for such an agent. Yeah, it means an AI that is an assistant, an agent for us, and does tasks and basically helps us get information, teaches us, and starts from young ages to old ages. And the title is When Monkey Teach Monkeys. Yeah. So basically, when we are talking to each other, monkeys teaching monkeys. Yeah. But now imagine you have a high intelligence, such an AI that can take you under its wings and preserves and brings in the information the way you need. So and suddenly, with these generative AIs, we see that suddenly happening. And the results are amazing. That I think is what astonishes a lot of people and confuses them also, because so far, the chatbots have been very stupid, Siri and Alexa and however they are all called. But now this sounds like a real person sitting there. It's not always right, what it says, but it's great. Or creating pictures, images. Suddenly you can be creative with just a few text prompts and create videos and create sound and create images and text, and kids can suddenly create video games out of the ideas without knowing how to program. So it suddenly enables a lot of people, and I think that has brought up a lot of interest. But now it seems to get out of the hands because people feel it's too fast, this development. But of course, and you have probably heard about this concept of the long nose of innovation. So basically, a technology that suddenly comes into the spotlight and the public sees that has been under development for 20, 30 years. Yeah. And so if you're in the industry, that's nothing new. OpenAI, Sam Altman's company, the people there were surprised about the sudden interest in ChatGPT. They thought, it's based on an old technology, namely GPT-3, 3.5. And they were already with GPT-4. So Now, this call for a moratorium of 6 months, that's not going to work. There's just too many different entities working on that. Also, how would you do that? How would this, you forbid people that? What we see now is, for me, I always compare that like this. You have basically an iPhone or an Android phone, and Android and iOS are the operation systems. Now we see these large language models are basically the operation systems on AI as we see them. And now people start building apps on that. So we have millions of apps on iOS, we have millions of apps on Android, and now we see thousands of apps suddenly popping up using those AIs, those GPTs as a basis for their features and functions, and suddenly making cross apps. That means they're connecting it to the bank account, they're connecting it to voice recorders or text to voice, so that you can call the call center person. You connect it to financial data, you connect it to a server where you can deploy it in your code, and suddenly you have these autonomous agents that are taking a lot of tasks from you that are, you know, routine and boring for you, like calling to change your flight, 45 minutes on the phone. And on the other hand, companies could use that immediately to create AI agents that take these calls and do this stuff, and you don't have to wait for 45 minutes. It's just here because it's easily scalable. I think the bigger question that we have is, who's controlling those technologies, who is having the hands on that? What we see today is a few companies that have this large language, but we also see open source technologies where people can just install it there. So I think that concern is also a little bit overblown, in my opinion. And regulators have typically the problem that they don't understand anything. I mean, so I'm wrong. I'm here too mean. That it takes some time to understand what this technology does and how it works and what impacts it could have. So regulators, and especially in a democratic process, normally it takes a long time to figure out. And when they then come with regulations, the technology has already moved on far beyond that thing, and that makes it difficult. Now, some of those people who are calling for moratorium are themselves working heavily on quickly doing their stuff. Yeah. But what is like Elon Musk just announced that he's buying tens of thousands of GPUs in order to build his own XAI company. But then there is a different story behind that. I mean, even saying the idea was, let's not build larger language models than the ones that we have today for 6 months, in order to figure out how that works. I think there's a deeper question behind that. And the deeper question is, why do we need still so much data in those systems? So we have to scrape all these pictures, all these things in order to get this to work, when the human baby, I can show the baby the cat and say cat, and the next cat the baby sees, it knows it's a cat. It was trained on one sample. While machine learning systems, these generative AIs, need millions of examples, and we don't have million examples for a lot of things. Roomba, for example, had this problem of dog, this dog poop story. The dog poop, when you have a dog and the Roomba drives over it, then you have this tragic situation where all this dog poop is smeared over the living room. Now, iRobot, the company behind Roomba, didn't have enough dog poop pictures. So they had to go ahead and send the employees out to photograph dog poop pictures. And imagine yourself, college graduate engineer, working for iRobot, and suddenly you get this task of taking pictures of dog poop. You question your career choices, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is where this criteria of large language models, we should not build larger one, becomes obsolete, because what's trying is to make one shot or less than one shot the learning systems, learn more like humans, have less samples there, and that is the real question behind it. So that's already basically, this request to stop that is already obsolete in the moment they made it.
And if I could jump in, actually, you made a comparison a moment ago, and I want to come back to that. I think that this is absolutely brilliant, and this is something that we should highlight for the audience. So one of the things that's been going around is, Chat GPT, it does everything, right? It's like a Swiss Army knife for,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for AI. But you're describing that as a platform, or you compared it to an operating system, and then people are building apps on top of that. And so you might be able to compare that to like Unix or Linux or Mac OS or Windows, where it's supposed to do everything, but it's not necessarily tailored to those tasks. And then once that's in place, right, as that LLM gets refined, people come along and build specialized apps. And that would be like buying groceries or booking airline tickets or, checking your home security system, right? So
Correct. Yeah. So this is basically really you make a niche application on that, and I think we will see a lot of new companies coming out there. Just imagine, as an example in the smartphone world, Uber. This platform wouldn't exist without the iPhone. So the iPhone, the Android phone is where all these platforms that came out, and on top of them you build mobile apps. Tinder, yeah, imagine a dating app. Using navigation systems on that, yeah, using it for accessing your car and manipulating your car, controlling drones, yeah. All these applications in billion-dollar industry wouldn't exist without that platform. And I think that is something what we're gonna see, that we have these GPTs in different areas. And then maybe, some of them may be focusing on certain area niches, more for business, more for consumer, more for legal stuff, yeah, or more financial. We see Bloomberg GPT, for example. And on top of that, people will build their apps, and this could be themselves, again, billion-dollar companies that are coming out of that based on that.
Well, so being in the Valley, and again, in terms of the Silicon Valley mindset, which is something that you have focused so heavily on, I would imagine I'm up in the Seattle area, right? So we have Redmond up here, but it must be going absolutely crazy in terms of AI down there, right? And that would go against the moratorium, right? I mean, my impression, and I'm not positive, but my impression would be that every company is looking at some way to get into AI right now. Is that the
They
case for
have
the Valley?
to. They have to. If your tasks are suddenly 10 times faster than before, or you as a person can become 10 times more productive, you cannot compete without using AI. So you have to look at those tools, and I have a hard time following how many tools there are. And now you see, let's say, Microsoft integrating not only ChatGPT into their or GPT-4 into their search engine Bing, but also into their Office product. So an example that was shown is you send out let's say a mass email to people, but every newsletter, every mail is written differently, because you have just a thing behind that generates personalized emails for everyone, not just dear Mario and then the same standard text, but the texts themselves are different. And that creates new opportunities, more personalized stuff. You just your work process is different. Maybe I give you one example. A friend mentioned that his mother-in-law is working for banking mergers and acquisition, and she has done that for decades. And that normally when they acquire a bank, it takes them several weeks to go through all the legal things. The bank is from that country, and this regulations not being followed or different, and so on. So they have to do this due diligence and get that on the same level. And that takes weeks. And now with the ChatGPT, she could basically generate a lot of texts, went through as an expert, said, okay, that's wrong, that's correct. So put it in a document, and had within 3 days a several hundred-page document, what normally would take care weeks. Now, not only that, she created out of that immediately a presentation, because you can compile it and do a different output. And then she went ahead, before she went into her board to present that, she went and said, what would the board ask? What questions would the board ask? So she basically used it to red team her material, so that she's better prepared for that. And that really 3 days instead of weeks. The amount of time you save and all the stupid routine stuff is just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and as you were talking about that, one of the things that came to my mind was like marketing email campaigns, right? And I mean, in the past, back in the day, it used to be they would write one email and try and put a persuasive message in and send that out to everybody. Now we have personalization where you can draw variables from a database, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's the same message, but it's kind of fill in the blanks. It's
yeah,
dear name,
yeah,
and
yeah,
what you're describing with AI is you can take those variables and tell it to write a million unique persuasive messages. Every single one will be different and tailored to that
yeah, yeah.
person, right?
Correct,
So,
correct. If you've heard about, there was a study coming out a few days ago from Stanford University together with Google Research, where they use basically like Sim City, like City Sims, yeah, this video game using 25 agents in a virtual village called Smallville, where they created 25 characters in with a description. So they use the API of ChatGPT and have them interact for 2 days with each other. And they give them tasks. And the tasks were, for example, organize a Valentine's party. And the other one was you're running for mayor of the town. And then the people were interacting, the characters were interacting with each other, the agents, and suddenly they were gossiping, and the one who organized the Valentine's party asked a student to help her decorate a certain Maria, and Maria uh, told her that she has a crush on another agent of Klaus, yeah, and so she invited Klaus also to the Valentine's party. So suddenly it becomes you can simulate human behavior in those. And that opens a big door for scientists, researchers, instead of, changing incentive system in an online forum or studying to first run it through such a simulation. And just heard Simone Giertz on Lex Friedman's AI podcast, and she suggested, so what about if you clone yourself as a virtual agent and then send your agent to 20 different dates that you had on, basically, instead of going live to 20 dates on Tinder, you send your agent first to to those 20 people, and you select those where the humor is the same, where controversies are better handled, and so on. And then only then with the three top of the 20, you go on virtual dates, on real dates. So you're something, okay, here it takes interesting areas, but you see people are thinking in these directions already, and you would have not thought about that like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and suddenly it's a possibility.
yeah, it's so incredible in terms of now, one of the things I work with a lot of scientists and physicists, and I've seen some of them starting to use this to consolidate research, right? Where normally they might be going through and they'd be using search tools, but it would
Mhm.
still be very time consuming to go through and look at,
Yeah,
find me every paper on, a quantum spin that was published between, that was relating to,
yeah.
and now they can give those instructions to ChatGPT and it will spit out a list. And so that can save them dozens of
Yeah.
hours of research and find things that are really obscure. So,
So that's why we have to teach people of how to use it. So it all depends on how well you're doing your text prompts or your prompts in generally, of how they are. You see already job descriptions for a text prompt AI editor for newspapers and for other places. So this will become a skill. If you look at, for example, prompts for those images that we see, like President Obama and Angela Merkel spending their time at the beach, yeah, these are very sophisticated text prompts, and you have to learn them, and in order to basically get the stuff out of the system in the way you want it, and that becomes its own skill. It becomes a new tool that you use now, like, you need to learn how to use Photoshop, yeah, and now you need to learn of how to use those AI systems in order to get the results you want. And I think that is just showing there are completely new job descriptions coming out there, and we have just no idea what this will be in the next 5 years.
wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Mario, let me thank you so much for your time today. It is such a pleasure to have you with me. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing all of these insights and ideas in terms of where AI is going. So let me close by asking, what comes next for you? What are your current projects? And where do you see AI going in terms of Silicon Valley, I guess, in the next few months?
Yeah. So AI in the Silicon Valley certainly helps a lot to revive the area. We had, you may have heard that San Francisco has been hit really hard by the pandemic. We have most people working from home, so only 30% of the people that before that were in the financial district are now not here. Only those are here. So people working from remote, and that means also the city is kind of dead in certain areas, and stores closed and restaurants closed. So that's a really sad situation. But with AI, you see currently there are meetings, events all the time now, and everyone is trying to understand and trying to get their hands on doing something, pitching ideas. So we will see a lot of interesting things coming. What I'm working on is something maybe not so much AI and technology related, although it's about technology. It's a look at population collapse. So you may have heard that birth rates are going down. Yeah, in most Western countries, and even in other countries, China, for example, now has been overtaken by India, and in China we have fewer babies per year than in Europe. And Europe is only a third the size in population than China. And so while the big topics that are dominating the news, like climate crisis, energy crisis, war in Ukraine, species that are dying off in masses and so on, they are all solvable through technology. We have the solutions. We know how to solve the climate crisis. We're just not doing it. We're not interested in the policies and so on. Yeah, there's a big struggle here. But how to get people to make more babies? that is not really technology. Yeah. So this is. I'm here as an engineer, also here studying. Okay, so how do you solve a problem if there's no technology for that, or if technology is not the solution? So the policies are the solution, and other things. And so I'm writing about that, what it would mean, and here's maybe the connection to intelligence. We are living in ever more complicated, sophisticated, complex societies, and we need more brains, more intelligence. Now, humans are basically in a multidimensional intelligence space. Yeah, then we have dogs and dolphins and ants and so on. But that is basically the space, multidimensional space. But the intelligence space is much, much bigger. Yeah. So, and the technologies that we build, like AI, are complementary. They're not human-style intelligence. They are different. And the more intelligence we can create, the better we solve those problems. Now, when the population shrinks, and the predicted forecasts are that starting 2050, 2060, the population will peak on the planet and then will go down. We are not having enough human brains, to solve all the problems that we need them to solve. Yeah, and that means we're becoming poorer in that sense. And this is a book that I'm writing about, and this is very counter today's public opinion that we have too many people on the planet. We have more than enough resources. We have shown over hundreds of years that we use less and less materials per person, that they become cheaper, that we always find, thanks to our intelligence, new ways of using fewer resources, other resources, replace them. And the doom and gloom sayers here have always been proven wrong. Yeah, we are still here on the planet. Yeah, we're actually using much less land than in the past. Yeah, people are moving into the cities. Cities are more sustainable than living in the countryside. So we actually have more forest in the Western countries than decades before. Yeah, we're living healthier. Our rivers are healthier than they were 100 years ago. So you see, again, here comes my optimism.
Yeah.
Looking differently, and how can we get to have people, more babies, to sustain the human race?
Well, that sounds like a to be continued. But sir, for today, let me thank you so much for your time again.
Thank you, Tim, for the interest and the possibility to talk to you.